Tonight, the governor is overhauling the state parole board after flaws in the system allowed a parolee to be freed. He's now charged in a triple murder in Gunnersville. Thanks for joining us. I'm Demetri McClinton.
And I'm Dan Schaefer. Jimmy Spencer is accused of killing Marie Martin and her grandson, Colton Lee, just 7 years old, back in July. Just across the street, their neighbor, Martha Relaford, was also found dead. Spencer was a parolee, an offender with a violent past. He faces multiple counts now of capital murder. Now, after a series of Way 31 I-Team reports, Governor Ivey and the Attorney General are forcing the parole board to take action and come up with a corrective plan. This is a story we've been on top of all day.
Members of our I-Team are down at the state capitol. Way 31's Scotty K has the reaction from advocates on today's announcements, while Way 31's Brecken Terry is standing by, ready to answer questions about what all went down.
First, let's get you up to speed with everything that's happened today from Montgomery. Right now, the governor has temporarily stopped all parole for all violent offenders. That decision comes after Ivey met with the Board of Pardons today. The meeting also resulted in a change of leadership.
And I just have to tell you, I was disappointed in that meeting.
Today, in a private meeting, Governor Ivey and Attorney General Steve Marshall addressed concerns about parole cases, specifically the Jimmy Spencer case.
And as you can imagine, since the Jimmy O'Neill Spencer case, we've had multiple people express their concerns and ask a lot of questions.
The governor's disappointment is followed by a new executive order, which changes the leadership of the parole board. The governor replaced Chairman Clifford Walker with Lynn Head, one of the other board members. But so far, nobody on the board has been let go. Under the same executive order is a stop on early parole considerations.
What you see with that executive order is a clear statement from the governor that what we know is unacceptable. And so we've not only stopped the practice, but now require them to come forward with something that we can then understand and basically be able to approve.
The order says, quote, effective immediately, the board shall not consider any inmate for parole under the inmate's initial parole consideration date as determined under the board operating procedures. Governor Ivey also created a 30-day implementation period, which is designed to improve 4 areas overseen by the parole board. Those areas are ensuring excellence in executive leadership, cultivating a culture of respect towards victims and law enforcement, ensuring adequate preparation for parole hearings, and maintaining supervision of parolees. The parole board now has to develop a corrective action plan and then present that to the governor and attorney general.
The board has 30 days to come up with that corrective action plan. Once it's approved, they have 15 days to put it in place. I'll send you out to our reporter, Brecken Terry, who was there for the governor and attorney general's major announcement.
And she's standing by in Montgomery to give more information on what this all means. And Brecken, you've been investigating the Spencer case from the very beginning. How many of families have reached out to you with concerns over this parole board?
Multiple families have reached out to me. It's almost too numerous to count, but I've gotten really close with a couple of them who started following our stories very early on. Obviously, they were having their loved ones' killers coming up for parole, and because of our investigative work, they said that they have no confidence in this parole board effectively doing their jobs. And just to be completely honest with you, most of them were terrified. I mean, these families would call me multiple times a day. They were petitioning the governor for letters advocating that this person stay in prison. So it was a very emotional thing to watch these families and the fears that they had throughout this entire process.
Brecken, this halt to early paroles, explain that and what you have seen in your visits to the parole board.
Well, the early paroles, it's kind of like this. If someone is given a life sentence and they serve 85% of that sentence, or about 15 years, then they can legally come up for parole. Now, when I went down to the parole board, I saw multiple people who were in prison for murder that were actually getting paroled after serving only 7, 8 years of their sentences. In one case, a guy from Mobile County actually had only served about 12 years of his life sentence when he was paroled for murder. So it was a very eye-opening experience to see so many people getting paroled.
And Brecken, has a governor in Alabama ever taken action like this against a parole board?
I actually asked the governor's office that very same question, and their legal team told me that they were on it, but at this time they don't know if a governor has ever taken action like this against a parole board.
And certainly this has to be a win for victims all across the state.
Yeah, guys, I've spoken with many victims' families, from vocal advocates all the way to people who have had their loved ones killed, and they were just ecstatic at the fact that Governor Ivey is doing something about this parole board, but they tell me they're not going to be blindsided. They want things to actually change, and that's what they're waiting on, guys.
All right, thanks so much, Brecken.